Generally speaking, an outstanding victory is frequently linked to a fighter's most memorable fight. However, there are also a few instances where a superb performance wasn't sufficient to secure a victory. Thus, in this video, we'll look at 8 UFC fighters who, while losing, managed to put on an incredible show. Now, without further ado and ranked in no particular order, let's take a look at 8 impressive performances that ended in a loss. Number 8. Johnny Hendricks vs. St-Pierre. Johnny Big Rig Hendricks is a former welterweight champion who has had plenty of impressive wins, including victories over Carlos Condit and Robbie Lawler. That said, Big Rig nearly shocked the MMA world by defeating a man who many considered to be the greatest of all time. We are, of course, talking about George "Rush" St-Pierre. The two clashed at UFC 167 with the welterweight title hanging in the balance. During the fight, Hendricks managed to give GSP all he could handle and brutalize the champion with several vicious shots. It was the first time in years that a fighter had made St-Pierre look human. So much so that several media members and even UFC President Dana White scored the fight in favor of Hendricks. Unfortunately for Hendricks, the judges didn't agree with the majority of onlookers. Despite a potentially legacy-defining performance, Johnny Hendricks lost the bout via a controversial split decision. Number 7. Stephen Bonner vs. Forrest Griffin 1. The American Psycho Stephen Bonner made the most of his appearance on The Ultimate Fighter's inaugural season. While he never really picked up a signature win inside the octagon, his Ultimate Fighter finale bout with Forrest Griffin earned a spot in the UFC Hall of Fame. For 5 grueling rounds, Griffin and Bonner exchanged the type of blows that could easily shorten a fighter's career. Their incredible back-and-forth war, which aired on Spike, is largely credited with helping to popularize the sport of mixed martial arts. And while Bonner ultimately lost the contest, his unforgettable performance ended up earning him a contract with the UFC. Stephen Bonner would go on to share the cage with folks like Jon Jones and Anderson Silva, but it's the epic bout with Griffin that ensures that his name will never be forgotten. Number 6. Thiago Santos vs. Jon Jones. Boasting some of the heaviest hands in the business, Thiago Santos has more than lived up to his nickname, the Sledgehammer. Sure, his resume may include victories over top talents like Anthony Smith and reigning UFC light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz. But it's his UFC 239 bout with Jon Jones that truly put the MMA world on notice. Heading into the fight, most people expected Jon Jones to pick up a relatively easy victory. As it turned out, Thiago Santos was a very game opponent and rose to the occasion. Despite stepping into his first title fight, Thiago Santos looked very composed and used his aggressive striking to dictate the pace. Not only did Santos give Jon Jones one of the most competitive fights of his career, he did so with a severely compromised knee, having torn his ACL, MCL, and PCL in his left leg. When it was all said and done, Jon Jones earned a split decision victory. But Thiago Santos proved that he could hang with the best of the best. Number 5. Dominic Reyes vs. Jon Jones. After knocking out former middleweight champion Chris Weidman in October of 2019, Dominic the Devastator Reyes had transitioned from a rising prospect into a top contender. Still, despite a perfect 12-0 record, many pundits thought that Reyes might not be ready for the step-up in competition that Jon Jones represented. Nevertheless, partially due to a lack of viable contenders in the division, the Devastator would face Jones for the light heavyweight strap at UFC 247. During the first 3 rounds, Reyes was able to outwork Jones and even managed to drop the champion in the opening frame. In fact, Reyes ended up giving Jon Jones arguably the toughest fight of his career. However, as Reyes began to tire, Jon Jones was able to pick up the pace and held the advantage in rounds 4 and 5. When the final round concluded, many onlookers believed that Reyes had done enough to become the new light heavyweight champion. But, unfortunately for Reyes, it was simply not meant to be. While the judges would end up awarding in favor of Jones, Reyes had no doubt captured the attention of fans from all around the world. Number 4. Claudia Gadela vs. Joanna Jedrzejczyk 1. Brazil's Claudia Gadela has been a top contender in the women's strawweight division for several years. She's unquestionably picked up her fair share of big wins against opponents like Carla Esparza, Angela Hill, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Wins aside, Gadela's performance against Jedrzejczyk at USC on Fox 3 was nothing short of phenomenal. While Jedrzejczyk admittedly got the better of the striking exchanges, Claudia Gadela used her elite grappling to control the polished staff for a large portion of the fight. When the final bell had sounded, it appeared that Claudia Gadela might have wrestled her way to a victory against the future strawweight champion. However, in the end, it was Jedrzejczyk that was awarded the win. That said, Gadela had come very close to derailing or at least delaying Jedrzejczyk's record-setting title reign. Number 3. John Dodson vs. Demetrius Johnson 1. John the Magician Dodson is a former Ultimate Fighter winner who has enjoyed a lengthy career in the UFC. The longtime MMA veteran has had several career highlights, which even includes a first-round knockout over a young TJ Dillashaw. Still, the Magician's most magical performance occurred at UFC on Fox 6 back in January of 2013. That night, Dodson became the first flyweight to give then-champion Demetrius Johnson a run for his money. Their initial encounter was extremely close, with Dodson looking outstanding in the early rounds and even scoring a knockdown in the second. However, as champions often do, Mighty Mouse came on strong and was able to keep the title around his waist. And though he may have came up short in the end, there's no doubting that John Dodson came so close to changing the course of flyweight history. Number 2. Clay Guida versus Diego Sanchez. Clay the Carpenter Guida has long been considered one of the most entertaining fighters on the UFC roster. That said, many of his best performances have been in a losing effort. While Guida has earned Fight of the Night honors a total of 6 times, he unfortunately has only managed to win 2 of those contests. That said, Clay Guida is still a 2-time Fight of the Year winner. His most notable Fight of the Year performance came against Diego the Nightmare Sanchez back in 2009. Given both fighters' reputations for bringing the action, most expected Diaz and Guida to put on an exciting show. And once the two met inside the octagon, fans definitely weren't left disappointed. For 3 grueling rounds, the two athletes beat each other senseless in a back-and-forth contest that produced one of the best fights in UFC history. While Sanchez picked up the split decision win, Guida's stock rose just as much by being involved in a fight that would wind up being in the UFC Hall of Fame. Number 1. Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping U. Dan Hendo Henderson is widely considered to be a legend in the sport of MMA. Known for his knockout power, Henderson has put away stars like Michael Bisping, Mauricio Shogun Hua, and Fedor Emelianenko. While Henderson has earned several notable wins, one of his most impressive performances actually resulted in a loss. At UFC 204, in a rematch with Michael Bisping, Henderson gave the middleweight champion one of the hardest fights of his career. During the bout, Henderson was able to land several devastating shots and knock Bisping down in both rounds 1 and 2. Despite Henderson landing the hardest strikes and doing more in terms of damage, it unfortunately wasn't enough to earn the nod. Since Bisping held the advantage in volume, he was awarded a close decision win to retain his middleweight title. And although Henderson wasn't able to ride off into the sunset with a UFC belt, pushing a champion to their limit at 46 years of age is certainly a noteworthy feat. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.